Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So a couple of days ago, I did a video, and in that video, I talked about how there are some Black content creators, on YouTube and other social media that are joking about these ICE raids that are taking place around the country. And just to be perfectly clear, ICE has been raiding schools and businesses, detaining and arresting what they allege are undocumented immigrants. And in fact, in Newark, some of those people that they arrested are actual citizens. And that's something that the Newark Mayor Ras Baraka pointed out in his press conferences. And I encourage you all to check that out. So a lot of people in response to that video basically said that Black people have no friends, we have no allies, we're in it alone. They talked about how when we tried to unite with other groups of people, they laughed in our faces and all that kind of stuff. That's the narrative that's being promoted out here on social media. And you also have this popular movement on social media called FBA, which stands for Foundational Black Americans, and it promotes this isolationist type of mentality where these people think that Black people, Black Americans specifically, are in it alone and we have no allies. And I think that that's a dangerous ideology, and I think it's a divisive ideology, and it's a counter-revolutionary ideology. One of the 48 laws of power is this. One of them says this. It says, don't build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. And unfortunately, that's what people are doing online. They're building fortresses to protect themselves, and they're isolating the Black community from other communities. And to be more particular, they are isolating the Black American community from other communities, where they're even isolating themselves from other Black people and other minorities and so-called people of color. They're isolating themselves from that. And the thing is, this narrative that they're presenting is wrong. But before I go into how it's wrong, I have to address that law of power. Because in America, African Americans only make up 13% of the population. In order for us to get any substantial legislation passed that will be beneficial to the Black community, we need to have allies. In order to get anything done in this country, given the fact that we are only 13% of the population, we need allies in order to make that happen. And the sad thing is, a lot of these people that espouse this view, this isolationist ideology, this FBA nonsense, none of them, unfortunately, are actual organizers, actually doing work in the community. Because if they were organizers, they would understand the importance of solidarity. They would understand the history of solidarity among various groups in this country. But these people don't really do the work, unfortunately. These leaders behind FBA and these other divisive movements, they are not about organizing the people to do anything leading towards Black liberation and empowerment. They are about empowering themselves. They are about selling products to the Black community, selling movies and flags and all these other merchandise. For them, this is just another hustle. It is not about liberating anyone. So these people don't have practical experience in terms of organizing any kind of demonstration or organizing any kind of legislative push or any kind of real political agenda. These people are professional entertainers, and they are profiteering off of the suffering of Black people. They're not really interested in the work, unfortunately, because if they were interested in the work, they would understand the importance of solidarity and coalitions. And, they talk all this talk about how we're in it alone and the Latinos don't support the Black community. And that's just false. There are plenty of Latinos that participate in these Black Lives Matter demonstrations that have been walking with us in unity for an end to police brutality. They have been standing with us in the fight for civil rights and social justice in this country. And there's a poll that was put out in the New York Times that talked about how 21% of Latinos said that they had participated in Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And that is close to the same percentage of actual Black people that participated in those same demonstrations. And I will post a link to that in the probably in the comment section and in the description to this particular video. But that rebuts this whole argument that we don't have allies. And then when you look at the civil rights movement, white liberals and other groups of people were in solidarity with us in the civil rights movement. Many white people actually gave their lives fighting for social justice, fighting for civil rights. Many of them gave their lives, standing side by side with African Americans in our struggle for civil rights. So we need to get rid of this false notion that we are in it alone. There are supporters, there are allies that we can work with. And people, again, that actually do the work know this. Like whether it's civil rights litigation. In many of the civil rights cases that, that I've been a part of or involved with in some kind of way, there are white attorneys, there are Asian attorneys, there are Latino attorneys, they're in court actually doing the work to end discriminatory practices, to end, efforts to suppress the Black vote, to end, discrimination in public accommodations, and jobs and employment, in all kinds of areas, in housing. So these people that talk about how we have no allies and no friends, they are just factually incorrect. They're just wrong. And then when you look at, for instance, the example of the brother, Fred Hampton, the revolutionary leader of the Black Panther Party in Chicago, that brother was about building coalitions. He worked with the Young Lords, and that's a revolutionary organization of a revolutionary Latino organization. The Panthers work with those organizations. They work with Native American groups and poor white groups and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that Fred Hampton pushed. He pushed the need for coalition. He talked about how you don't fight fire with fire. You fight fire with water. You don't fight racism with racism. You fight it with solidarity. That's what the brother Fred Hampton was about. He was the one that built the first real rainbow coalition at that particular era. So we have to understand this. They want us to be divided so that way they can conquer us. And unfortunately, you have these people online that are promoting division, not only division with other groups of color, but they are promoting division amongst Black people. They have African Americans going against Black immigrants, and and vice versa. That's the environment they're creating. They're creating a toxic environment of division. And as we are, when we're divided, we're conquered. When Black people are divided, we're conquered. When all people that are oppressed are divided, they're conquered. That is why you have a ruling 1% in this country, because they have effectively divided the people along racial lines, along class lines, along gender lines and all that kind of stuff. As long as we're divided, we will continue to be oppressed. And that's why this isolationism is dangerous, as pointed out in one of the 48 laws of power. We have to work with others if we want to see change in our communities, if we want to see the legislation that's necessary to bring about further change and all that kind of stuff. If you look at the civil rights legislation that we have, none of that would have been passed without coalitions. The March on Washington had people of all different races involved. It took white elected officials to actually vote for the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Rights, Fair Housing Act, for those to be passed. It took the votes of white elected officials. So we have to get rid of this false notion that we're in it alone. We have to build our power, and you build power through coalitions, based on mutual respect and understanding. And I'm not saying that there's no racism in these different communities. Racism is a fact of life. There is racism among some Latinos and other groups of people, but there are also people that are in those communities that are willing to work with the black community. There are people that have actually not only expressed willingness, but have actually done the work and have been involved and engaged in the struggle. And we can't just write people off and, dismiss them, based on what they look like or because they're not African American. When the fact is there are people that are willing to struggle with us and support us, and we in turn should be willing to support them and their movement based on what's in our mutual best interest. As long as we are divided, we are conquered. As long as we're divided into these different little camps, we're not in a position of strength. In order to combat this Trump administration and all of its efforts to undermine civil rights, we need to unite with other groups of people that are also adversely affected by Donald Trump's policies. Because even if you look at a game of chess, like and I'm probably going to do a video about chess, but even when the pawns are in alignment, they can withstand attacks from more powerful pieces. And it's time for us to be in alignment with each other, for us to stand as a mighty wall against this Trump administration and all its racist, anti-civil rights agenda. That's what we have to do. Just like the fingers on the hand. When they're like as individual fingers, they don't have as much power as they have when they're united as a fist. A fist has far more power than a single finger. And so that's what I'm talking about. That's all I'm saying. And the other thing that I want to say about this immigration issue and all that kind of stuff and these ICE raids, the fact of the matter is, and I know it probably doesn't matter to these FBI narrow-minded bigots and stuff like that, but the fact of the matter is, many of those people that are being caught up in these ICE raids are people that look like us. They are black people. There are plenty of black immigrants in this country that are also impacted by these ICE raids. This is not just some Latino issue. This is an issue that affects people of various backgrounds. So let's be clear about that. And the other thing that I wanted to address is that a couple of people said, well, in that particular video that I did, I talked about how if they come for one group, they'll eventually come for us. And I know full well that they have already come for African Americans. Obviously, they came for us from the day that we were put on those slave ships and brought to this country. They come for us every other day when it comes to police brutality and all that. We understand that, and the Trump administration is coming for us now in its attack on DEI programs and initiative. It's coming for us now in the form of, the attack on equal employment opportunities. So I'm not missing that. I understand that full well. But what I'm talking about is in terms of rounding people up. That's something that is happening right now under this Trump administration. And that's a different situation. But, we have suffered, and I'm not saying that we, haven't suffered and, they haven't already come for us. But I'm just talking about this particular situation when it comes to these ICE raids. We should not sit on the sidelines while this kind of stuff goes on. In fact, as I pointed out earlier, many of the people that are caught up in those raids are people that are actually citizens. And what they're doing is they're targeting people based on what they look like. That's how they're targeting people. And that's a form of racism. And any decent person, especially African Americans who have suffered at the hands of this racist, white supremacist society, should be sympathetic to that situation, to that particular plight. So that's what I'm saying. And, you know, I'm really interested in hearing from y'all. I'm going to probably do a shorter version of this video on my TikTok. And before I close, you know, I just want to say, you know, I encourage you all to please rate, comment, and subscribe. I want to shout out the people that came to our book club meeting. Much respect. We meet again on the last Sundays of each month via Zoom and in person. So like our Facebook page, New Possibilities Book Club, to keep updated about the next books that we're going to read. And, you know, so with that, I'll say peace and blessings. You know, share your thoughts with me about this particular issue.